Hey there, Eli here with my brother and co-host Joshua from This Is Something. You know, sometimes things just defy a genre.
You know, like a platypus.
Or Taco Bell's meat. Well, we think we have the perfect solution for those situations.
That's right, we give you This Is Something Else. Hey, Eli.
Hey.
So recently I just finished a book, and I thought we'd talk about that for a minute or two.
I didn't know you knew how to read.
Oh. I actually just read The Millionaires Unit by Marc Wortman.
Wortman.
It's about a bunch of kids in Yale, and they essentially started the U.S. Air Force in World War One. They band together and they make a flying club, and from that club becomes the first Yale unit, is what it's called, and they fly all over Europe in World War One. They become pilots.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a super interesting book. Super interesting. Structurally, it's written a lot like he kind of writes somewhat along the lines of Stephen E. Ambrose, who wrote like Longest Day, Band of Brothers, Citizen Soldiers.
I've read some of those actually.
So his writing style is somewhat in that vein. I think he does a really good job of capturing the time period and capturing the culture leading up to World War One. And what it was like to be in these mega wealthy families in this time, and these kids were all mega wealthy, from mega wealthy families. These were Rockefellers.
Well, that's back in the day. You know, at that time, you were paying for college generally straight up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and if you wanted to go to college anywhere, you had to be pretty well off. Of the few besides the few colleges that were a little bit more accessible to the people, you had, Yale, you had these huge universities that people would go to and pay lots of money to be in. Your parents had to be well off. And
these weren't just well off. And when I say mega wealthy,
I know what you mean.
When I say mega wealthy, there's a part of the book where when they first get their hands on a Sopwith Camel, the plane Sopwith Camel. The one guy says it's a really tiny plane. He said, and he writes his parents, says that the Sopwith is so small it could fit in our library. And it's like, okay, so that's a testament to how small it is. It could fit in a house. But then you're like, oh, but they have a library so big in their house,
you can fit a plane.
They can fit a plane in it. I think he does a really good job of capturing just the culture and the time period leading up to World War One. I will admit, I thought the first half of it was kind of dry, and it really picks up in its second act once they get to Europe.
Now, is it written as a novel, or is it written more like in a documentary kind of style?
More of a novel, kind of like I said. Structurally, it's very similar to. Thank you. Structurally, it's very similar to Stephen E. Ambrose, the way he writes like Band of Brothers. So more of a more of a linear story instead of just like this happened. Really, just some amazing stories in there, and there were things in there I didn't know. Of course, I play a lot of Battlefield 1, and when you're a pilot, you jump out of your plane, you have a parachute. We actually didn't provide our guys with parachutes.
No.
In World War One, I did not know that. I kind of assumed that that kind of just went hand in hand, like, oh, airplanes and parachutes.
Was it that the parachute hadn't been invented yet? Or?
No, they did, but because the cramped space in the plane, most of the British, French, Americans opted to not go with a parachute. Also, they didn't go up with oxygen, so these guys were putting extreme torment on their bodies to the point that most of them suffered some degree of physical pain, or they had problems into their, the rest of their lives, deafness and all that, where the Germans were actually actually using oxygen. They were actually taking up oxygen tanks. So it was, it's a super interesting book. I definitely, I would definitely say go out and, if you're interested in World War One, or you're interested in piloting and piloting culture, aviation, I would definitely suggest checking it out.
It must be a nice book because the front is embroidered, bumped up, whatever they call that.
It looks like on the front there. I just realized earlier this week when I was reading it that on the front, I didn't really look at the front too much, but there was somewhere on here it says soon to be a major motion picture. So they're going to be making this into a movie.
When did this come out?
2006, I think, is the year it came out.
Soon. Maybe it is, and we just don't know yet.
Well, it's in paperback, so it could be a re-release of the book.
That's true.
So I picked this book up on a whim at Half Price Books and was really happy to. It's been a really good book. Just some of the things that happen are astounding. Like I said, it's like the thing with the parachutes. Just things I had no idea about.
Mm-hmm.
And it's chock full of stuff like that I had no concept of what was going on. I will say this. Something that I found very interesting is we talk about a lot of, the mega wealthy people trying to get their kids out of war. And it's interesting because these kids are, these are spoiled rich kids. Mm-hmm. These kids are freaking wealthy. And yet, and they're going to college and they're coming out of Yale under the assumption that, the world will be handed to them, that they'll take over the country when they graduate. That's kind of the way things had worked in America up to this point. Like they went to college and they were the leaders, the patriarchs of the country when they graduate. But having said that, there was this idea that with owning the country came the idea that you also served your country, and that if war came, you were the first before some kid out of the kid out of a farming community signed up. You were first on the front lines to sign up. The idealism of the mega wealthy was very different than the mega wealthy of today, to the point that at some point in the book, one of the guys uses his connections to get a desk job stateside, and the rest of the unit is, they're not happy with him. They are writing letters and like, hey, you need to come back. You need to come back. And he's too ashamed. He doesn't write back. He stops writing back to them, just because he's too ashamed. And so the idealism of these kids is very different. Though granted, they are still like kind of, they're spoiled rich kids. They're too good to sit on a military base, so they rent out a whole hotel so that they can stay there instead. It's a weird conjunction of like this kind of being spoiled and rich and serving their country and doing their duty and putting themselves through a lot of torture to make sure that they and putting themselves on they have casualties. They lose members of their unit. So it's just an interesting dichotomy between the two. So this book is The Millionaires Unit. It's by Marc Wortman. If you're into aviation, if you're a history buff, or you're into World War I, if you like the writings of Stephen E. Ambrose, check it out. It's a great book. I suggest it. So there's that. You want to, should I sign us out, or you want me to?
Sure. Until next time, I'm Eli.
I'm Joshua.
And this is Something Else.
We hope you liked today's video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and leave a comment because we enjoy chatting with you.
Also, check us out on Instagram and Facebook at This Is Something. All the links are below. Thanks, and have a beautiful day.